The governor presented his first budget in January, and it was about just over $300 billion. And he had a spending plan included in that. Interestingly enough, within that budget, he projected a $38 billion deficit within his spending plan. I'll get back to that in a moment. Concurrently, the Legislative Budget Office responded to that plan and said that the deficit, this is the big issue, how big is the deficit? The Legislative Budget Office said the deficit was not what the governor said at $38 billion. It was $58 billion. Was it 38 or 58? We have a gap. And the big question is, how do we close that budget gap? I come out of the business world. Many of my audience here is in the business world. Business people know that you budget. Your family, your home, your household budgets. You project. You know what you're going to get in, or you project what revenues you're going to get in, or net income you're going to have, and then you put your budget plan against that projected net income. The state doesn't do it that way. And so the governor, as I said, had a $58 billion deficit, $38 billion, but it's really 58, and I'll get back to that in a moment. It's what he does, or what the administration does. I don't know if he's doing this personally, but I see no spending cuts, is more deferrals. We're dealing with the 24-25 budget. The fiscal year begins July 1st, 2024. And so it's pushing spending to the last half of the year with no increase. That's good, but just pushing spending to the rest of the year without cutting spending. In business, as you well know, you see business headwinds, and there's a recession, there's slowdown, there's marketplace changes. What do you do first? You cut spending. You identify areas where you are going to cut the fat of your organization. Then you cut into the muscle, and then you cut into the bone when you divest operations. The state doesn't do that. There's no fat cutting. It's already there. It's untouchable. And so organizations who want to know if they're going to be funded in the governor's proposed budget are making a case for keep the funding for me, keep the funding for me. These are organizations saying this. I mean, good organizations who have relied upon California general fund spending, budget allocations for decades, and rarely are they ever cut. That's a whole opportunity to do an audit on that someday. I'll get into that. Are these programs, many programs are good, many programs need to be evaluated for effectiveness, and are they delivering on their promises? Now, January came in $15 billion below projections, revenue projections, below revenue, meaning income tax, sales tax, corporate capital gains tax is down by 15. We're up to $73 billion deficit. It was just 2 years ago, people will remember, we had a $100 billion surplus. That's gone poof. So that's gone. That was spent largely on, as I understand it, that was before my time, on one-time expenses, projects, but no one can tell me what it was done. So we have a $73 billion budget. The governor now, as obligated, has to come back in May to the legislature with a revised budget, so with updated economic information, and we'll see where he is going to cut. There's a lack of understanding, in my opinion. The governor is CEO of the state of California, and there really has been very little directive as to what agency heads should do in this case of severe economic budgetary crisis. Ironically, and this is what people really need to understand, and I honestly need to do a little bit more digging on this, I don't think we're really in an economic crisis. The governor likes to talk about California is the fourth or fifth largest economy in the world, and that's fabulous. But you know what is happening? People, businesses, small businesses, large companies cannot leave California. They're too established in their footprint, like real estate companies and medical facilities. They're here. But so many small businesses, small service industries, small manufacturing are leaving California. So let me talk about how that affects the deficit, the budget situation. So every worker employed by a company in the state of California pays income tax. They earn an income. They pay taxes to the state of California. And this is how the budget office knows that the projections are falling behind targets, is because there's automatic payroll that's deducted from everybody's paycheck every week or every 2 weeks or every month. And they can see that the payroll numbers are in January of 2024 are $10 billion less than they had projected. Why is that happening? And this is the elephant in the room no one is really talking about. The IRS last spring published in national news. If you, in your mind's eye, see the state of California and a red arrow, which illustrates income leaving California and going to Florida, going to Texas, going to Arizona, a red arrow. This is payroll taxes, income tax payments going out of state. These people have left. These are middle income, high income earners leaving California, and they're no longer paying income taxes or capital gains taxes into the state treasury. So this is why we are seeing a deficit. So when the IRS published that data last spring, that's when the early projection on the deficit that the governor said was $38 billion and the Legislative Budget Office said was $58 billion. The IRS identified that loss to California as approximately $50 billion. And we hear the legislative offices said we had a deficit of $58 billion. So nearly 100% of that deficit is coming from workers who are no longer paying into the state through their payroll taxes.
Just a quick note here. We actually talked to Governor Newsom and the Legislative Analyst Office about the exodus impacting the budgets in California, and both believe that the exodus has a minimal impact on California budget. But we also sat down with an economist, Dr. Jim Doty, who has been predicting California's economy pretty accurately over the last few years, and he believes that the exodus has had a big impact on budget in California. This is a perspective that hasn't really been covered that much in the mainstream media. We're leaving you a link to this interview in the comment below. You watch this interview and let us know what you think. Now let's go back to the opinion.
Now one could say, well, maybe there's unemployment. Well, there's very low unemployment. The governor likes to say there's very low unemployment. It's maybe 2 or 3%. And growth is, we have high inflation, but we have a regulatory climate. Why is business leaving California? We have a regulatory climate that is extremely oppressive for small businesses. I talk to small business owners all the time. There are laws on the books in California that are not friendly to business. And even the transition to zero emissions, that every single business, small business, large business, every single business has to transition to electricity by 2035. To a small business that may not have an R&D department, they don't have government relations people, they don't have a lobbyist, they have outside lawyers, they have to transform their business model to zero emissions. Now, the marketplace, I believe in the marketplace, will get us there eventually. But to force it on small business by 2035, they're saying we can't do this. We can't run our business. These are people that barely make a profit because they're investing their profits, their smaller profits every year into their business to grow their business. So there are many companies that we can't do it anymore. We're going to a friendlier, business-friendly state. So that is the reality. No one likes to talk about it. The California Chamber talks about it. Business people talk about it. But this is what's causing the deficit because we do have a strong economy. It's just that it's not bringing in as much money as it should. Now, spending has, because of inflation, retail spending has gone down. Also, we have retail crime. People are not going into the stores. They may be buying online, but they're not going into the retail stores. So we have crime. We have people leaving California. Their payroll taxes are not going into the state treasury. Public safety issues. Here we should have the strongest economy. Why, even given inflation, but we don't. I mean, GDP nationally is 2%. I mean, it should be stronger, but at least we're growing 2 to 3%. But so why Why do we have a deficit? In very simple terms for your audience who manages household budgets, we spend too much money. We spend more money than we bring in. And the state is allowed to have a deficit. I come out of local government. I served on the city council for 8 years and chaired our finance committee. You can't have a deficit at the city level. You have to match your projected revenues to your spending. And if you get more revenues in from property taxes or sales taxes or transient occupancy taxes, that's for hotels and restaurants, and you get more revenues in, then you have a surplus, but you don't spend it before it comes in. Nobody projects to spend, plans to spend money that they don't have, but the state does. And I'm concerned about it because in these 2,100 bills that have been introduced this past week, most all of them require fiscal allocation. And they'll say so on the bill, fiscal impact. I sit on the Appropriations Committee. I will see. I enjoy that committee because you see where all the money goes. I will see all these bills because 95% of the bills introduced, that's my own estimation, have a fiscal impact. We have groups coming in, education, from all levels of education, nonprofit organizations coming in to Sacramento and lobbying to preserve their budget, their general fund, state budget allocation. And education takes about 78% of the state budget, so there's very little other, and then labor, wages, so there's a little room to play with. But there are organizations, nonprofits that do good work, and they have a line item that they get funded by the state of California, and they know that's in jeopardy. So it's going to have reverberation throughout our communities too. We have economic cycles. We need to be prepared for dealing with an economic cycle. But this is controllable. This is the point we're acting like it's an economic problem. It's a willful overregulation problem. We're stifling business, and business is taking its employees and leaving California. We all know we lost a congressional district, and that was after the 2020 census. People are estimating that we could potentially lose 4 more districts. That's speculated. I don't have confirming data on that. It's somewhere between another 1 and 4 if population numbers continue to decline. So it's going to be an issue. Now, how the governor deals with creating a balanced budget will be interesting to watch. Now, understand he only has to do this one time. He pushes, and he's not the first. The governors just push it to the next spending year, keep things level, maybe trim a little here. Don't renew contracts until July 1st. That goes in the new cycle instead of June 30th. So there are little tricks that they play. It's not illegal, but they're just budget tricks to defer spending to another budget year. He is termed out, the governor is termed out in 2026. So he really technically has the fiscal year 24-25 budget. That's what we're working on now and we'll be working on. The 25-26 budget, we'll see. He's not going to be here to solve that problem because he will be terming out or doing what else he may want to do wherever he goes. So this is the future. Whoever is the future governor will have to make the hard decisions. So they're going to look at what are the options. You can make hard cuts, or you have to project where we're going to get more revenue, or stabilize the budget, cut programs, raise taxes. So that's a real concern. We all know personal income taxes are now, the highest rate is at 14.4%, the highest or second highest in the nation. And business taxes the same. What I think is happening in Sacramento, this is my opinion, that there is a constitutional amendment on the November 2024 ballot it's ACA 1. It doesn't have a ballot number yet because we're just getting through the March ballot, but it will have a ballot number and a proposition number. But it's a constitutional amendment that would allow for a 55% vote to increase for local governments to increase taxes for all infrastructure, and that's a very broad topic. That's hugely concerning because right now it takes 2/3. It's hard to pass a bond measure at 2/3, except now it's changed for education. School bonds can be 55%. But if all taxes can be increased by the local agency at 55%, that's very concerning. So what is happening People are starting to realize what this is. If the state can't pass, the pressure to resist passing taxes, which is good. I strongly support no tax increase. I don't know if we can ever cut taxes. We just don't want them to increase. Then their next best hope is to go to the local government, go to cities and counties and give them more taxing authority to propose and convince their voters to approve a bond measure or a spending tax, a special tax, new sales tax. There is a limit on sales taxes, but not all cities go to the limit. Any tax or fee assessment with 55% of the vote. That is very concerning. So it looks like this is what the state is realizing. If we can't get a tax measure passed at the legislature, we're going to go to the cities and let the cities help solve the problem and let the cities start taxing people. I mean, they have very few choices. If they don't want to cut and they've just raised the minimum wages for public employees and contracts, then they have to raise tax. I hope not. I'll vote no for every single tax increase. I'd vote no at the local level. Many cities in Orange County would. I think that'd be tough in Orange County, but there are other cities, Los Angeles, San Francisco, the people may support a tax increase at 55%.